Voices that do more than just sing have been the foundation of the gospel music industry for decades. A few voices offer consolation. Some people recover. Additionally, some people quietly lead others through their faith without ever seeking notoriety. Among their voices was Marshall Hall. He was calm, stable, and well-respected. He never made an effort to stand out, but it was hard to ignore him. Fans were therefore taken aback when it was discreetly revealed that Marshall Hall had left the Gaither Band. There was silence, no public explanation, no big declaration, and no obvious explanation. Many initially thought it was only transitory. Others thought it was just another typical shift that occurs over time in musical ensembles. But the questions only became more pressing as the weeks stretched into months and then months into years. Why would a man with such a strong connection to gospel music leave one of its most famous groups? Why would a man with a reputation for loyalty, humility, and faith decide not to give an explanation? Marshall himself added to the confusion of this situation. He refrained from arguing. He did not stand up for himself. He didn't say anything. His quiet felt uncommon and potent in a field where personal tales are frequently swiftly and openly disclosed. The fact remained unaltered as fans looked for solutions, media outlets conjectured, and rumors silently circulated. At 54, Marshall Hall is at last prepared to think critically, not with resentment or guilt, but with candor. This is not a tale of controversy or strife. It is a tale about faith, pressure, purpose, and a time in life when taking a step back is more crucial than remaining visible. Beyond everyone's wildest expectations, what actually took place behind the scenes was far more intimate, human, and significant. And in order to comprehend Marshall Hall's decision, we must first comprehend the man he was before the silence started. A quiet gospel music leader. Marshall Hall. Marshall Hall was frequently the person who people paid the most attention to, even though he was never the loudest voice in the room. He exuded calm assurance and a profound appreciation for the message of gospel music from the start of his career. Singing, in his opinion, was about serving rather than getting noticed. He was intellectual, grounded, and fervently devoted to his faith, according to many who worked closely with him. Marshall favored simplicity over the attention-seeking nature of many performances. Applause was not as important to him as meaningful lyrics, sincere devotion, and real connection. He stood out naturally because of his quiet strength. He was relevant without controversy. Both fans and other musicians came to trust him because of his sincerity and persistence. As time went on, he gained recognition not only for his singing, but also for his steady presence and ability to bring harmony to any situation. The golden era of the Gaither Band with Marshall. It seemed like a natural fit when Marshall Hall joined the Gaither Band. His presence brought a sense of peaceful unity to the organization, which was already well known throughout the world. His charisma enhanced the group's sense of camaraderie, and his voice blended in with ease. Fans will never forget this time, which was characterized by stirring performances and poignant messages. Marshall's influence was indisputable, even though he was never positioned as the band's face. He stayed focused on the group's spiritual objective, listened more than he spoke, and helped others. The band's sense of groundedness during this period was noted by fans. It was ministry, not just music. This period was ultimately regarded by many as one of the band's most genuine and spiritually linked. The narrative of Marshall Hall is not one of tragedy, controversy, or strained bonds. It is a tale about appreciating the peaceful times in life when a person comes to the realization that remaining visible does not always equate to remaining honest. Marshall performed on some of the most prestigious gospel platforms for many years, giving his voice to songs that gave millions of people peace, hope, and faith. However, he was also hearing something much more intimate behind the harmonies and cheers, a soft voice in his head reminding him that performance must always come after purpose. Many were perplexed when Marshall decided to leave the Gaither Band. From the outside, he seemed to be leaving behind a stable position in gospel history, success, and respect. In actuality, though, he wasn't abandoning his vocation. He was moving farther into it. His decision was motivated by a developing understanding that unrelenting expectations can gradually deplete the spirit if rest is never permitted, rather than by conflict or disappointment. Marshall's decision stands out in a society that frequently honors perseverance without considering the price. He realized that being honest with oneself is just as much a manifestation of faith as music. Worship would have become monotonous if singing had continued without spiritual serenity, and that was not an option for someone who had a strong sense of purpose. Retreating was a brave move, not a sign of weakness. The hush that ensued added to the impact of his adventure. Marshall took his time explaining himself. He did not refute rumors or defend his decision. His reserved demeanor seemed strange at a time when intimate tales are frequently conveyed openly and instantly. But what was most important to him was shielded by that quiet. It made it possible for growth without condemnation and healing without stress. It served as a reminder that not all chapters require public endorsement to be legitimate. Marshall had something he hadn't completely experienced in years: calm in life after the limelight. He realized the uncomplicated joy of faith experienced in secret, away from plans, tours, and expectations. He devoted all of his attention to mentoring others and helping up-and-coming voices. Smaller settings, deep conversations, and untimed music were places where he found serenity. This chapter fulfilled his past rather than erased it. At 54, contemplation took the place of hurry. Instead of remorse, time provided Marshall clarity. In retrospect, he recognized lessons rather than errors. He recognized that others who are caught between pressure and calling, between public roles and personal truth, would find solace in his narrative. Speaking now was about imparting knowledge gained from experience rather than going back in time. He sent a kind and genuine message to his admirers. His remarks were filled with gratitude rather than justifications. Even when there were no answers, he thanked them for their understanding, patience, and support. He emphasized that moving away does not equate to giving up on a goal. At times, it entails prioritizing serenity over approval, faith over fear, and life over noise. The journey of Marshall Hall challenges us to reconsider our definition of success. It challenges the notion that visibility equates to significance and serves as a reminder that the quietest decisions are frequently the most significant ones. Stages and acclaim alone are not the foundation of true legacy. Integrity, self-awareness, and the guts to listen inner, while the outside world expects external performance, are its foundations. His story ultimately has nothing to do with quitting a band. Honoring the emotion behind the song is the goal. It is about realizing that faith becomes stronger when it is safeguarded. It's also about understanding when to take a step back so that you stay whole rather than vanish. Marshall Hall did not disappear. He prioritized alignment above focus. And by doing this, his voice continues to reverberate, through example, rather than sound. The initial indications of separation. Gradually, minor alterations started to emerge. At first, most people hardly noticed them because they weren't very dramatic. Quiet times of introspection became more common, and lengthy trips became more taxing. Marshall began to spend more time by himself, reflecting more on purpose than performance. Public stress, disagreements, and conflict were non-existent. It was an internal change instead. He started posing challenging queries to himself regarding faith, equilibrium, and the price of perpetual exposure. People who were close to him recognized a profound change, not a bad one. It was the type of transformation that occurs when a person develops internally. Silence and rumors. Rumors gradually started to circulate as fans saw Marshall's diminished presence. Some made health-related conjectures. Others speculated about disparities in creativity. No one had actual answers, but social media filled up the blanks with conjecture. The thing that shocked everyone the most was Marshall's silence. His quiet seemed out of place at a time when explanations are sometimes requested right away. Marshall, however, saw silence as protection rather than avoidance. He felt that not all personal journeys had to be made public. He opted for calm over action as rumors grew louder. The notice of exit. When Marshall Hall's departure from the Gaither Band was ultimately announced, it was polite and succinct. There was mutual admiration, thankfulness, and pleasant words, but no justification. Fans were taken aback. Many had a profound feeling of loss, not only for the music, but also for Marshall's contribution to the group. The mystery was only heightened by the lack of specifics. Some were perplexed. Others were devastated. However, there was simply silent acceptance from Marshall's side at that precise time, not even resentment. A personal struggle is the real reason. Disagreement or scandal were not the real reasons for Marshall's departure. It was much more intimate. He had started to experience spiritual tiredness over the years, not from faith per se, but from the compulsion to practice it all the time. The distinction between expectancy and adoration had begun to become hazy. Marshall came to the realization that he needed to rest, not because he had lost faith, but because he wanted to preserve it. He felt compelled to take a step back. He did not place the responsibility on the industry, the band, or the audience. He just realized that if he didn't pay attention to his inner guidance, he would gradually drift away from the very goal he had once cherished. Reasons for his years of silence. Marshall remained silent out of deference. He didn't want anyone to misinterpret or abuse his personal journey. He was aware that public explanations frequently devolved into arguments, and he had no desire for that. He needed silence to heal. Growth needed a certain distance. He thought that comprehension would come with time, and even if it didn't, he was content with his decision. After the Gaither Band, life. After the band, life was more leisurely, peaceful, and incredibly satisfying. Instead of writing for stages, Marshall devoted more time to writing for himself, training young musicians, and engaging in private worship. Peace grew stronger, but fame disappeared. He found happiness in the little things in life: meaningful talks, intimate get-togethers, and stress-free living. This phase of his life was about realignment rather than a fresh start. Why at 54 does he talk? Marshall came to a realization at the age of 54. He felt prepared to provide contemplation rather than justification, not because he owed anyone an explanation. Growing older gave understanding rather than regret. He saw that others who were caught between expectation and calling could benefit from his narrative. Speaking now was about providing perspective rather than reopening the past. A note to the fans, Marshall gave followers a straightforward and heartfelt message. Thank you, love, and gratitude. Stepping away does not always equate to giving up, he told them. Sometimes it involves putting honesty, life, and religion ahead of pressure. Even in the absence of responses, he silently thanked those who had helped him. They were unaware of how important their patience was. Important closing note. The path of Marshall Hall serves as a reminder that genuine legacy is not determined by recognition or acclaim. Integrity, serenity, and the guts to follow one's heart are what define it. His tale has nothing to do with quitting a band. It's about picking truth over noise, trust over fear, and purpose over pressure. Sometimes the most courageous voices are the ones that take a back seat, only to be heard more clearly in quiet.